question is, knowing that you are based in Switzerland, we know that the swimming pool where you coach is a 25 meter swimming pool.
That's correct, yes.
But there is the idea amongst all the age group athletes and
yes.
all the pro athletes that the 50 meter swimming pool is the best one where you can swim.
Yes.
Do you agree with that?
No, definitely not. To be quite honest with you, I think the 50 metre pool for age groupers who are not swimmers, it actually makes them slower. So the smaller the pool, the better. I've actually trained swimmers in a pool that's 3 laps to the 50. Now, of course, triathlon's different, but I mean for age groupers, any pool that's above 16, 17 metres is fine for age groupers. And the pros, the difference is you change the way you train if you're a swim coach, for instance, that if you've got a 25 and a 50 metre pool. So the actual training is a little bit different. I find what's different is if you're used to 25 metre pool and then you go into a 50, it does hurt you for at least a month. So a lot of people don't get that. So they think, well, I'll go do the 50 and then they go do their race and they're dead and they can't work out why. It's definitely a different feeling. So the 50 pool is definitely different. And so they should be aware of that. But for me, I've trained Australian champions out of 25 metre pool. We do different things, of course. So if they were racing, and I'm talking swimmers now, so not triathlon, we would hold our breath after we went over the backstroke flags. And that used to make them tumble, push off, and then they would still swim really, really good in the 50 metre pool because they weren't getting the rest in the middle, which is what usually happens in the 50.
Sense. So my second question is, we know that you are famous for coaching girls mostly.
Yes.
Will we ever see you having a male athlete winning Kona in the future?
Well, again, I don't get, the girls will come to me. So of course I don't go out chasing athletes. So for instance, we don't recruit the top people. And I've always trained, even when I come into triathlon after swimming, and then I went to Ironman, it was my idea to train athletes who weren't the professionals to become professionals. Chrissy was an age grouper, James Cunningham was a low-level swimmer. Now we've got the captain, just got 50 in Bahrain, he was a sailor. So I've still stuck to that situation where with the Ironman we try to help the people that are struggling. So I've never went out to try to get top 5 people, and I won't. If they come, we talk. I can tell you we had 2 top 10s this year. People approached me to coach, 3, and I've said no. Not because I've got anything to do with them, but they're going well. Why would they?
Why change?
Why change? I'm happy. I don't coach to see some people do well. So, of course, I had great. So James is a great athlete, as I pointed out with Ronaldo. I was getting him ready, and then the federation pulled him back, and his sponsors wanted him to do short. So it's something that takes time to develop. So at the present moment, it's not been a goal of mine. I'm not worried about being cold. It's the same as with the girls. I have Nicola has been here for 12 years now. So of course, when she retires, I'm not getting any younger. So for me, I'm not going to be doing it too much longer. So getting hold of someone and putting 5 years in, I don't think it's going to happen in the men's.
Now, getting this question about the girls, do you know if there's any reason why you don't have more coaches coaching just girls?
Well, I think, I don't know whether coaching them well or coaching them, I think they're in there. As I pointed out in my talk, I think you've got to train girls very different to boys. And so, of course, when you train them all the same and the guys are going well, nearly always the girls are going badly. If they're doing the same training, one goes good, one goes bad. Same as there's other squads, that's got the girls are going good and the boys are going awful. And I believe it's because they all train the same way every week. Well, as you just heard, we don't do that. We split the men up, we split the girls up. We even split the ITU girls.
Long distance.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense, yeah. My other question is there any kind of good advice that you can give to the new coaches that are starting now working the business? Yeah,
I think the biggest problem coaches now is that they need to put more time into understanding their athletes and the psychology of how to work with athletes. They put so much time into working on the principles and the tools and that, And they forget the most important thing, that when you're dealing with humans, they're fallible. And, you know, everybody takes the line that when they're developing their coaching programs, when they're developing the way, they say, well, this is, you know, the best athlete ever, so we're going to look at them. Well, I think they shouldn't do that. I think that's a young coach, you just heard me say with the techniques. You know, I didn't talk about techniques today, about swimming, because I know I'm going to upset people. So I didn't do it. You know, and I'm going to show them how to swim faster. But for me, the most important thing is the techniques are secondary to the human nature, and understanding what makes them go better, what makes them train better, what makes them recover quicker. I don't think they put enough effort into that. And I don't mean effort, but there's not, within the coaching syllabuses, there's not enough emphasis on the soft parts, the art.
Yeah,
it's all about there. Now that's it, where you go. And I think that's where people like me get a little bit of a head start on everybody else, because that's not my most important thing. My most important thing is, how do I create an atmosphere where the success becomes inevitable? And that's what I try to do. So I was told that when I was 15. I started my first full-time squad at 15, because again, my father was a coach, and he said, I was his assistant, and he said, if you think you can be a head coach, it's a different job to the assistant coach. And he said, if you become an assistant and stay an assistant and then decide you're going to be a head coach when you're 30, he said, it's different. And he said to me, for me, it was wonderful news, because he said, start out and do it yourself, make the mistakes, but be in charge. And he said, so that's what I'm saying for young guys, if they want to be a head coach, be confident enough to do it.
Don't be afraid to take risks.
Yes, you got to. You've got people all around you that want to be the best they can be. And the other thing is just research. As I said to you, I can show you with my phone, I've got hundreds of sessions that I've picked up from all different people. And I think that if you have that background, it gives you something to call on. When things are a little bit, I can look at this, look at that. What do they do this? A range of coaches. Like people say, which triathlon coaches have, really had an influence on you? The only coach, has an influence on me was when I first started off was John Hellemans from New Zealand, because we were friends. But he was a sports doctor as well. So I was able to learn things in that area off him. But the coaches that really influenced me were like 1958 running coach Percy Soretti in Australia, Arthur Lydiard. They really had an effect on me. As I talked to you about Forbes Carlisle. Well, Forbes Carlisle was the Australian coach in 1968. He had a profound effect. Don Talbot was another great coach, but none of them were swim coach. They were all swim coaches or run coaches. They weren't triathlon coaches. Yeah. And I haven't met a triathlon coach that makes me think I should be doing that. You know what I mean? And it's the same with the biking. As I mentioned, I went and spoke to four of the greatest cyclists of all time. I spoke to Greg LeMond. I didn't tell a story about it, but I spoke to Hino. I went and spoke to Aubrey. And it gives you a sense of knowing of what made them tick. They didn't have to tell me what they did. You could feel it. And I hope today that people felt, okay, now at least we don't agree with him, but now we know why his athletes are so hard to beat. Now, if you get that impression when you walk out the room, he doesn't know this, he doesn't know that, but I'll tell you what, I know why they win.
Perfect.
That's what we did. That's what we do.
Any advice for the new athletes who want to start doing long distance now?
Yeah, you've got to work. If you're not a swimmer, it's very hard now. So it's like the ITU. Before, the people that couldn't do ITU because they didn't swim well enough went long. That's good. That's changing now. So if you can't swim, you've got a real problem. And that's because everybody's much better at all three things. Before, 10 years ago, you could have a weakness and you could get away with it. You could be a bad swimmer, good biker, good runner, no problem. Not anymore. Not anymore. So I'd suggest to anybody starting off that you've got to get in the pool. And if you're not a swimmer, you've got to put the time in the water.
The more time you swim, the better you get.
Well, yeah, if you do it in the right way. But as I said to you today, I had one of my great champions. She won the 1998 World Championship, so I know it's going back a long way. But she was a terrible swimmer. But the first 6 months I trained her, she did 5,000 25s. She didn't swim any further than 25 metres because she had the terrible stroke. She couldn't do 850s on a minute. Okay, so I just give her every session she come in 25. We didn't talk about how fast she went. We just said, well, today we're doing an hour and an hour. Tomorrow's an hour and a half. The next day, 45 minutes and a rest. But we just went 25, 25, 20. We ground the stroke in. And then in 96, she was last at the World Junior Championships. 97, she won the Junior Championship, last out of the water. And then in 98 in Lausanne, she won the Open. She beat McKeely Jones. And so that gives people the idea, you know what I mean? That you don't have to do, she did a ton of swimming, but it was all short and it was good technique.
And building confidence.
Building the technique. And then, you know, she got out of the water 10 seconds behind the main pack. It was all over.
So my last question is, you have worked with horses.
Yes.
So we know that genetic is quite important.
Yes.
And nowadays we have a lot of triathletes who are getting married and having kids.
Yes.
Do you believe if one of those kids wants to just starts doing triathlon, he'll become like
Well, I think triathlon's different. And I mean this for two ways, because as you said, with the genetics, the reason why I got out of swimming, and I'll give you an exclusive, is because I seen kids that trained so hard, but they just didn't have the body shape. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're a girl and you're built like that, you can't swim, you know, unless you have an operation, which a lot of them do, which people don't know about, and it's terrible. And then, so I thought when I got into triathlon, it was 2 hours. So I thought, you know, if you didn't have the genetics to be powerful and you had the ability to train hard, I thought, you know, and I did. That's how I started off. I had 6 juniors, 5 of them with my ex-swimmers, and I said, "Come on, let's try this." Okay, and Ben Bright, he was the other guy, and they loved it because they weren't training twice a day in the swimming anymore. So of course they loved it. But the thing was, all of them represented Australia as triathletes, where they wouldn't have been able to in swimming, because 2 of the guys were really small, great for triathlon. Not great for swimming. They were good swimmers. They were state champions.
top level.
They were never going to go and represent Australia. So of course that made me think, well, in triathlon, you don't have to have fantastic genetics to be speedy and do this. So that's why I swapped. And then from, again, I did it from 92 to 2004, I stopped. I actually went back and trained horses for 2 more years. I come back in 2006, and then we had Tim Don win the World Championship, and then Chrissy come in 2007, and I was off again, and that was it. But I was retired then. I wasn't going to. I was actually going to go into boxing training, to be honest with you. I had a contract and all. It's a funny story. I can't tell you now, but I mean, I'd actually did the horses, and then I was contracted by my own boxing promoter when I was a professional boxer. And the trainer of the gym was retiring. He was old, he was 75, and they contracted me to do the thing. Now, my wife was pregnant, so we had to go back to Switzerland because we couldn't get health insurance in Australia because she was Swiss. And then my old athletes put together a team and said, okay, just for 1 season. And of course, then they come in, and then Tim come in, and I couldn't leave. And that's how I got back into triathlon. I was actually going to boxing. And so then we stayed. But that 18 months of horses got my mind to go right back to be more psychological. You know, I just got away from it. I was getting like every other coach. And then when I spent the first 4 months was terrible with the horse. I was awful because I forgot. I kept trying to coach them like they're people. And then I had to go back. And then when I unravelled it, and then we had some great success with the horses. And as soon as I went back to the triathletes, I sort of threw away all the books and started just treating them like basically horses. And since then it's been boom. Yeah. So, you know, I'm humbled to, it's funny at the end of my career because Nicola, we made a pact between us at 212. She was going to retire after the 212. Whether she won or lost, her husband and we shook hands because she wasn't married or anything. So at 212, 9 months beforehand, we shook hands and said, you know, I'm going to retire. You'll, you know, no matter what happens, win, lose, come 30th. And her husband said, yes, we're going to get married and we're going to have a child straight away because Rito's old, and Rito was a champion himself. He was two-time European champion, Nicola's husband. So we'd all agreed, we sat around, we shook hands, and of course she won, which was wonderful, and they got married, and boom, had the baby, and so that was it. And then all of a sudden, 2 months after the baby, I want to go to the Rio Olympics. You know. So back we come, and then Danny come, and then that's what happened. So, you know, I'll definitely be training up to 220. Mm-hmm. But as I said to you the other day, I now got assistants.
Yeah.
So I have a female assistant, and I have a male assistant, and then I'm going to get a European assistant. Mm-hmm. And so it just takes more pressure off me because
it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. Yeah. So, yeah, so basically now I feel I get much more help than I ever did before, and I can share it. It's very nice. I can share it with the others as well. So, you know, as I just said to you, apparently now while I've been doing the talk, we just got Coach of the Year in Switzerland, and so I was able to and share it with the group and say, you know, it's wonderful, and they're all very happy and excited about it, of course. So, you know, so for me, it's rejuvenated me. Mm-hmm. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to go to the end of 220. And Danny, we'd made our mind up to do 2 more years. Mm-hmm. So we'll have to see what happens with her at the present moment, but we don't want to say anything public about that. However, after 220, we'll see where we go from there. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.